These two best friends pretend to be dragon hunters to earn some money. After receiving the gold coins, they try to run away, but a little girl starts following them and she will not leave until the dragon is killed. The land where people lived on has been divided into several islands which float freely in the air. People have still found a way to continue their lives in these bizarre circumstances, but the difficulties don't end here. Besides the floating islands, the world is also full of deadly creatures and especially dragons. Among these floating islands, there exists a magnificent castle where Lord Arnold lives along with his fellow lord, Gildas. Arnold doesn't have relatives except a teenage niece named Zoe. Unlike normal kids, Zoe is obsessed with reading adventures of dragon hunters. Most of the day, she locks herself in the room and pretends to be one of the dragon hunters. When the supper time arrives, Lord Gildas has to personally invite Zoe to the dining hall because she never keeps track of the time. Meanwhile, Lord Arnold spends his day waiting for the hundreds of knights he sent to fight the dragons. He has even lost his eyesight, but he still wants to see a brave knight killing all the dragons and bringing prosperity to their land. Since the knights were defeated, one by one everyone left the castle, including the servants. Arnold is blind, and Zoe is just a careless child, so Gildas has to prepare the food and look after everything. During the supper, Gildas reminds Arnold that it's time to send Zoe to the convent of Crooked Tooth Sisters, as the castle is no longer a safe place for a young lady. In response, Arnold says that he always wished to have a nephew instead of Zoe, so he could teach him the basics of being a dragon hunter. Zoe is still willing to learn them, but Arnold explains that being a boy is not enough to become a hunter. One must possess special skills for such a huge responsibility. Before Zoe can reply, a knight returns to the castle. The lords can't believe someone actually survived, but it isn't what it seems to be. It's just armor full of ashes. Now they have to find more knights to send after the dragons. Zoe wants to do it, but Gildas asks her to prepare herself for the convent. Just a few islands away, there live two friends, Lian-Chu and Gwizdo. Lian-Chu is gifted with a giant and strong body, so he pretends to be a dragon hunter, while Gwizdo is a small but clever guy who has found a new way to earn money. They gather the public to show them Lian-Chu bravely fighting a monster. In exchange, the public had to pay for the entertainment Gwizdo provides. Lian-Chu is not trained for such fights, so he often gets in trouble. This time the situation gets worse and people start laughing at his stupidity. With the help of their pet Hector, Lian-Chu succeeds in defeating the monster, but the public still refuses to pay. They wanted to see a real dragon hunter, and Lian-Chu can never be one. Hearing this, Gwizdo gets really angry because he spent days finding these customers. He puts all the blame on Lian-Chu and calls him incredible. As a dragon hunter, Lian-Chu should have a scary personality and dangerous hobbies, but he's the opposite of that. He has a kind personality and a soft heart, and his only hobby is knitting. In anger, Gwizdo snatches away the knitting needles and unintentionally hurts Lian-Chu. He didn't know that the needles belonged to Lian-Chu's dead mother, who taught him this skill. Gwizdo immediately apologizes and asks Lian-Chu to always stay beside him, as he can never find a better friend. Once they earn enough money, they will fulfill their dream of having a farm with chickens and cattle. While Gwizdo is imagining his farm, the Jimbob dragons attack someone in the forest. Lian-Chu hears the screams and rushes to help the stranger. It's no other than Zoe, who ran away from home to avoid the convent of the Crooked Tooth Sisters. Seeing the dragons for the first time in her life, Zoe finally realizes how dangerous they are, and there's no way she can ever fight them. When she prepares to die, Lian-Chu reaches there and uses his knitting needles to defeat the Jimbob dragons. Zoe immediately gets impressed and runs to hug Lian-Chu. Gwizdo reaches there too and asks about Zoe's parents so they can reward them for saving her life. Zoe explains that her parents are already dead, and she is wandering in the forests to find more knights for her rich uncle. Hearing the word rich, Gwizdo gets really excited and lies that Lian-Chu is a real knight who has killed hundreds of dragons all by himself. Zoe easily believes everything and asks Gwizdo and Lian-Chu to follow her to the castle. They get really excited to see the castle and look forward to earning a huge amount of money. Zoe tries to introduce them to her uncle, but Gildas sends her to the room. Arnold can't see, but he uses his hands to judge how Lian-Chu looks. After feeling his muscular body, Arnold declares him a true knight and offers to give him an important mission. They all walk to the secret basement, which tells the story of the deadliest dragon called World Gobbler. After every 20 years, the terrifying dragon wakes up, leaves his lair on the far end of the world, and comes to devour the entire region and burn down all the villages. He only leaves ashes behind him. Arnold is keeping notes of all the signs of the awakening of the dragon, and unfortunately all of them have appeared already. Arnold has seen World Gobbler, and only the mere sight of him made Arnold blind. Lian-Chu has to travel to the end of the world and strike World Gobbler to death before it wakes up. Once he's killed, the land will get back its prosperity, and Arnold will be able to see again. He promises to cover the knights in gold for fulfilling this mission, but of course it's not as easy as it sounds. Gwizdo doesn't care, and asks Arnold to sign the contract. Afterward, he asks for a bag of gold as travel expenses and leaves the castle. Lian-Chu wonders how they are going to defeat the dragon, but Gwizdo explains that they aren't doing anything like that. They will run away with travel expenses and use it to buy a small farm. Little do they know, Zoe will not let them go so easily. She escapes the castle again and lies that Arnold told her to accompany the knights. Before Gwizdo can send her back, thousands of flying dragons attack them. Gwizdo runs away to save his life while Lian-Chu stops to pick up Zoe. The flying dragons gather up to form a giant monster and block the way. It starts breathing fire and burns everything in sight, but Lian-Chu hides behind a stone. As soon as he finds a chance, Lian-Chu runs away with Zoe while the monster falls off the bridge. Zoe gets impressed once again and calls Lian-Chu the greatest hero she has ever met. Gwizdo can't take it anymore and asks Zoe to return home, but suddenly the bridge to the castle falls down. Now they have no other option besides moving forward. On their way, Zoe starts narrating their journey like the fairy tales she reads. She even sings a song to admire Lian-Chu's bravery. The little girl never stops talking, but Lian-Chu seems to like her, and he listens to all her stories without getting tired. From his favorite weapons to the school he went to, Zoe wants to know each and every detail about Lian-Chu. She thinks Lian-Chu is a real-life interpretation of the great dragon hunters she read about. Zoe always wished to meet the fairy tales heroes, but of course it was impossible in real life until she saw Lian-Chu. As it gets dark, they find a camping spot and start looking for woods to burn. Gwizdo is really tired of Zoe and tells Lian-Chu to stay away from her, but Zoe makes Lian-Chu feel credible. However, Gwizdo's definition of credible is different. He wanted Lian-Chu to help him in running away after getting the money from Lord Arnold. This game of knights and dragons is just going to kill them eventually. Lian-Chu understands his friend's concern and gets ready to reveal the truth, but Gwizdo has different plans. He knows that if they tell anything to Zoe, she will run to her uncle who will punish them in the worst way. Instead of explaining things to her, it's better to just leave quietly while she's asleep. Zoe may not survive alone for long and will get eaten up by the wandering dragons, while Gwizdo and Lian-Chu can live peacefully on their little farm. Later that night, Gwizdo keeps waiting for Zoe to fall asleep, but the little girl is full of energy. She doesn't stop talking and keeps asking random questions. Gwizdo can't take it anymore and asks Zoe how to make her fall asleep. She immediately shows a book and tells Gwizdo to read a bedtime story. Instead of a kid's adventure book, it's the story of a dragon hunter who stood against one of the most terrifying dragons in the world. The author has clearly mentioned how the dragon had eaten hundreds of children, and their screams kept echoing in the air. Zoe falls asleep, but Gwizdo can't believe that she is reading such inappropriate stuff. She deserves to enjoy a carefree life, but here she is, stuck with fake knights. Gwizdo still doesn't change his selfish plan and asks Lian-Chu to wake up. They need to leave before the sunrise, but Lian-Chu is fast asleep. The next morning, Lian-Chu reveals that he was pretending to be asleep because he can't abandon a kid in the middle of nowhere. Gwizdo tries his best to convince Lian-Chu by reminding him of the farm, but Lian-Chu is not going to leave Zoe at any cost. Eventually, Zoe wakes up and continues telling her endless stories once again. They keep moving forward and reach the gate to the end of the world. The first place they need to cross is the deadly caves full of traps. Gwizdo can't risk his life and asks everyone to go back, but no one listens to him. Suddenly, one of the castle knights runs towards them. Zoe immediately recognizes him and asks about the dragon, but the knight seems to have lost his senses. He was so terrified of the dragon that his mind and body had stopped working properly. As he steps on the gate, it flies away in the air while Zoe and her team are left behind. There's no way to turn back, so Gwizdo quietly follows Lian-Chu and Zoe. They enter the caves where they get attacked by falling stones, but luckily they escape in time. On the other side, there's only floating remains of abandoned villages. Before anyone can find a way to reach their destination, the flying dragons attack once again. Gwizdo leaves his friends and hides in a building to save himself. Poor Zoe keeps knocking on the door, but Gwizdo doesn't open. On the other hand, Lian-Chu is even protecting the poor sheeps living there. He brings them outside and locks the dragons inside the shed. The remaining dragons gather up to form a monster, but it's missing the head that's locked in the shed. Lian-Chu gets a brilliant idea and climbs up on the shed. Afterward, he uses the sheep's sound to distract the monster and makes him step on his own head. Once the monsters leave, Gwizdo finally comes out to check on his friends, but they are really angry at his selfish behavior. Later that day, Gwizdo tries to explain himself to Lian-Chu. He recalls their childhood when they had to fight even for a bunch of cookies. Life has never been easy on them, so they don't have time to believe in fantasies. Lian-Chu asks him to shut up, but Gwizdo keeps talking and says that what they are dreaming will never happen. It's not like Lian-Chu will stand against the world gobbler and it will die. In fact, only the knights die in such battles because life is not a fairy tale. In response, Lian-Chu tells Gwizdo to leave by himself if he doesn't want to die. Gwizdo doesn't say anything and walks towards the edge. He gets on a piece of land and drifts away from his friend. Suddenly he sees two flying dragons who keep insulting him. They call him a selfish person who abandoned his childhood friend. Gwizdo gets really frustrated and starts fighting the dragons, but then he realizes that it was just his imagination. He is losing his senses like the knights. Gwizdo starts to panic and falls down, but luckily Lian-Chu saves him. They get back on the island, but something is flying under it. Suddenly, a few fire dragons break out of the ground and attack the island. Lian-Chu grabs his scythe and fights the dragons while Zoe hides in a corner. She asks Gwizdo to help his friend, but Gwizdo still hasn't returned to his senses. The island eventually breaks into pieces and everyone falls on the ground. Lian-Chu and Gwizdo are fine, but Zoe is lying down lifelessly in the corner. She seems badly injured and may not survive. Before dying, Zoe tells Gwizdo that he was right. Life is not a fairy tale and Gwizdo and Lian-Chu aren't real knights. However, they are still Zoe's favorite heroes. It's all about what you believe in. Zoe's last wish is seeing her favorite heroes defeating World Gobbler. Gwizdo feels really sorry for her and promises to fulfill her last wish at any cost. Hearing this, Zoe jumps in joy and hugs Gwizdo. She was just pretending to die to hear what Gwizdo really feels. He's not as selfish and mean as he seems. Lian-Chu asks everyone to get up as they need to slay a World Gobbler. Unfortunately, they are late. The dragon is about to wake up and his snores bring giant earthquakes. Suddenly, the ground splits up and a skeleton dragon rises up. It's the World Gobbler that's going to kill everyone. Lian-Chu asks his friends to hide in a corner while he faces the dragon. He tightly grabs his scythe and bravely attacks World Gobbler. Surprisingly, the scythe breaks just in the first strike. The dragon gets really angry and turns his mouth into a vacuum that sucks in everything. Lian-Chu grabs a stone while Zoe and Gwizdo are drawn towards the dragon. They hold on one of his teeth and call Lian-Chu for help. Zoe apologizes for putting them in danger, but Gwizdo says that he's going to believe Lian-Chu like Zoe always did. Meanwhile, Lian-Chu covers his eyes because this event is bringing back the harsh memories of his childhood. His whole family was burned down by the dragons, and he only found the knitting needles. Lian-Chu used those needles to draw the picture of World Gobbler and pinned his eyes. This gives him an idea, and he asks the World Gobbler to let his friends go. Once Zoe and Gwizdo get down to a safe spot, Lian-Chu grabs his knitting needles and runs towards the dragon eyes. Unfortunately, he is thrown down, and the needles fall near the pit of fire. While trying to get them back, Lian-Chu falls in the fire pit, but he throws the needles towards the dragon. Thankfully, the needles strike right into the eyes of the dragon, and he bursts into pieces. A white light spreads everywhere, and turns the world into a beautiful place full of round green islands. Gwizdo thinks it's the best place to start their farm and build a house. They will also leave a room for Zoe so she can visit them anytime. But first they need to pick up their well-deserved reward from Lord Arnold. However, Lord Arnold refuses to believe them. Zoe keeps explaining how Lian-Chu killed the dragon, recovered nature, and brought back Arnold's eyesight, but Arnold asks her to quietly move to the convent. Zoe walks away in anger because it's better to stay in the convent than living with a heartless old man who doesn't love her at all. Gwizdo agrees and tells Arnold that he doesn't know how special Zoe is. She is courageous and intelligent who deserves much more than a self-centered, miserly old uncle. Arnold kicks them out of the castle, but Zoe has something for them. She is leaving the castle forever to live with Gwizdo and Lian-Chu. They will also build their dream farm because Zoe has stolen all the gold coins they deserved as a reward. Everyone starts singing in joy and proceeds towards their new life. A real hero is not the one who has super strength and a giant body. He's the one with a golden heart and the courage to stand against evil.